everybody, welcome back to another episode of Legit Street Cars. My name is Alex. I hope that you guys are doing awesome. And in today's video, we have two goals and two goals only. First of all, we need to fix a really weird transmission problem with my 2005 E320 CDI. And secondly, we're going to try and make this thing shift faster as well. We're also going to do some transmission preventative maintenance, some transmission preventative repairs. I'm going to show you 3 parts that cost like 50 bucks that fix a bunch of different transmission problems. Oh, and we're going to talk about why lifetime transmission fluid is total BS. All right, I guess that's a little bit more than 2 goals, but what are you going to do? All right, we have a ton to cover in this video, so we're gonna kick this off with my weird transmission issue. This is a problem that you guys may have, and you might not even know it. Take a look at this.
That is not a shift. That's the 1 to 2 shift. That's 2 to 3. So basically in first gear, the converter is supposed to be slipping a little bit, but not fully engaging. And what we're getting is a very harsh engagement of the torque converter clutch.
If you have to, take a look at that footage again, but it totally feels like we're getting a very harsh 1 to 2 shift right before the actual 1 to 2 shift. And this only happens when it's cold outside. When the engine gets up to operating temperature, this issue totally goes away. So all of you guys who live in much warmer climates than I do here in Chicago may not ever detect this problem at all. Before we get into what I really hope is the repair, here's a little bit about torque converter lockup. To understand how a torque converter locks up, let's take a look at how a torque converter works. A torque converter goes in between the engine and transmission, much like a clutch and flywheel assembly. The engine side of the converter houses the impeller, which is spun by the engine and acts as a pump, while the transmission side of the converter houses a turbine. The fluid is pumped by the impeller into the turbine blades and creates a fluid coupling, which in turn spins the transmission and moves your car. Now, there is always some slip with a fluid coupling because it's not physically locked together, and that disconnect is needed, much like a manual transmission needs to be able to release or slip the clutch to get moving. You can't have an engine and transmission directly connected until the vehicle is in motion. Once at speed, locking the impeller and turbine together causes a direct drive and can help increase fuel economy since there's no loss of power going from the engine to the transmission. Since there's no more slip, this also decreases transmission fluid temperature as well. This is all done using a clutch inside of the torque converter that is applied with pressurized transmission fluid sent through a solenoid. The clutch connects the impeller and turbine so they spin at the same speed and thus creates a 1-to-1 direct drive, and all is good with the world. Now, the problem with the CDI could be the torque converter, which would require me to drop the entire transmission and spend a lot of money on a torque converter, but it can also be this guy right here, the torque converter clutch damper valve. I'll talk to you guys about this in a minute, but this car is actually supposed to partially engage the torque converter clutch in first gear, and this, you guessed it, dampens that application. Let's go rip the valve body out and get into this and all these other parts that I'm replacing too. We're ready to work on this guy, our valve body, and what you just saw in the time lapse was maybe 15 minutes worth of work, a half hour if you're working on your back. Don't be intimidated by taking the valve body out or replacing any of the parts that you're going to see in today's video, because you guys can definitely do this at home and save yourself thousands of dollars. Now, what I wanted to briefly mention was Mercedes did design this particular car and this transmission to partially lock up in first gear and I believe every other forward gear. And the reason for this is the same reason why any torque converter would lock up. It's for efficiency purposes. Now, the reason why they have it partially lock up and not fully engaged is very similar to why you just don't drop the clutch in your manual transmission car when you're trying to take off from a stop sign gently. You could stall the engine, it can die out. The same thing can happen here, or at the very least, you're gonna get a very harsh engagement like I'm seeing with my car. All right, guys, let's talk parts and then we're ripping right into our valve body. We're gonna start off with some normal transmission maintenance work, and I got a really nice kit kit from FCP Euro, the king of the lifetime warranty. And you got a couple options with this kit. You can go with your normal basic transmission maintenance option, which includes your fluid filter. This is a factory Mercedes-Benz filter, some fluid, and of course you get your pan gasket, seal for the bolt, and then your cap for the dipstick tube. So right there is a normal transmission service, but if you want to do a little bit more, and I highly recommend this if you're going to drop the valve body, you should replace your conductor plate. This part fails all the time on these cars. It's basically a circuit board for the shift solenoids, but it also houses a speed sensor that fails. And this will put your car into limp home mode, so it'll be stuck in like third gear, and that's no fun. So I will put some codes, some trouble codes down below. So if your car's in limp home mode or you have a check engine light on, check those codes out. If you have them, you probably got a bad conductor plate. At the same time, you're definitely going to want to replace this seal. These little O-rings leak all the time. This thing just fits in like that. So this is another kit that you can get from FCP Euro with the conductor plate, the fluid, the filter, and everything. And speaking of fluid, I've used factory Mercedes-Benz fluid. I've used this stuff. I've used this. I've had good luck with all of them, so just pick your poison and stick with it. Next, we have something that could be a total lifesaver, the Sonax overlap sleeve kit. So you get 3 of these sleeves right here and some O-rings. This goes in the valve body, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. These parts are about 50 bucks. I got them from FCP Euro as well, and these can fix a whole bunch of different issues like a slipping transmission, a bump flare in a shift, and also a shuddering torque converter. So definitely consider doing these sleeves if you have the valve body out anyway, because you got to drop this to replace those. Next up, we have our torque converter clutch damper kit. I'm crossing my fingers, say a prayer, do a dance, whatever you got to do. I'm hoping that this fixes our issue so we don't have to do a torque converter possibly. Here we go. Let's see if this is fixed. Fingers crossed. But this kit includes our valve, our sleeve, our spring, a couple O-rings, and a C-clip, and of course detailed instructions. So all this stuff you're going to see comes with very nice instructions that you're definitely going to want to follow. Now, I got this kit off of Amazon and actually buy a ton of car parts and tools off of Amazon. So if you guys haven't already, check out my Amazon garage, which is linked in the description box of every one of my videos. Moving along, this is a Transgo shift kit right here. Now, I've used Transgo shift kits in the past, and they do make the transmission shift harder and quicker, but I called Transgo on this one, and these aren't actually modified parts. These are factory replacement parts. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't believe that this is going to make a massive difference in how quick or how firm the shift is. It's basically just going to restore the factory shift quality, mostly by way of this guy right here, which is our pressure regulating valve. So after a couple 100,000 miles, this valve could be worn out, and it could be decreasing your line pressure. So we're going to get a fresh valve in there. It comes with a lubricator valve as well, a sleeve, and a couple of springs that commonly break. So this is an excellent idea if you want to just kind of freshen up the valve body. It kind of goes along the same theme as the Sonax overlap sleeve kit. And in fact, this kit does come with its own version of these sleeves, but they don't come with the O-rings. And the O-rings kind of help seal the fluid in. I'll show you here in a minute what I'm talking about. But I like to buy this kit and this one separately. I got the Transgo shift kit from Victory Road Performance, and completely unrelated to this video, check this out. They sent me out their new motor mounts. I may try these out on the E55, but this is one completely assembled, and then they have different inserts depending on the amount of firmness, the amount of vibration you want transferred into the cabin, and depending on how strong you need your mount to be. But honestly, I don't think anything is breaking these mounts at all. So I'll leave a link and a coupon code to these mounts down below as well. Last up, something that I do believe is going to help firm up the shifts on this just a little bit, guys. This transmission is never going to be like a dual clutch automatic or anything remotely close to a modern automatic. But I'm hoping this will help out. This is a tuned transmission control module from Race IQ. So basically, he can increase the line pressure, the shift firmness. He can mess around with the RPM of the shift and basically make this transmission shift a little bit quicker, or basically as quick as it can shift. So we'll be installing this as well. So I'm hoping that a combination of all of this stuff right here, well, not the motor mounts yet, will hopefully make this transmission shift quicker and get rid of our really weird problem, all while doing some normal maintenance that we should be doing anyway. Alright guys, here's where we're at. We're tackling the torque converter, clutch, dampening, valve, spring, and sleeve first, and this is the only reason why we had to separate the valve body halves. The updated part comes with a little C-clip here that gets installed right in here, so you do have to take this top portion off. Now, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about cleanliness and lifetime fluid. So obviously, we're working in a very clean environment. We're using a brand new plastic bag here. We're not using any rags or anything like that either. Now, another awesome step that you guys can do if you see that you have really dirty fluid or your valve body is just kind of gummed up with anything at all is you can clean this. You can basically disassemble it all, clean it out with some brake clean, let it air dry, and that's not a bad idea if it's dirty. In my case, it doesn't look too bad, so we're not going to do that. But I wanted to talk to you guys about why lifetime transmission fluid is total BS. Now, this valve body is not the best example because it's in decent condition, but I think you guys will get the idea. Let's take a look inside of this bore. See all those little score marks in there? Some score marks are normal after many, many years of use, but if you're not changing your transmission fluid for the entire life of the car, because it's vented to the atmosphere, you are going to get dirt and debris. There's going to be clutch material that just normally wears out, and it's going to basically scuff up all of these bores, and there's quite a few bores and pathways in the valve body, and this can lead to all sorts of issues, which is why with Sonax they do include these little O-rings here to kind of make sure that that bore is sealed, and in some cases valve body replacement is necessary because all that dirt and debris has basically completely destroyed the aluminum. So why do auto manufacturers claim that transmission fluid is a lifetime? To sell more cars, it's plain and simple. If an auto manufacturer can sell you a car that you think doesn't require that much maintenance, you're going to buy that car. You don't want to spend any more money than you have to. And considering how people just basically throw cars away after a few years, this kind of only affects us who buy these used car bargains after they've depreciated down to almost nothing. Now, clutch packs and hard parts in the transmission, sure, you can go a long time with the same fluid, but what gets affected are valve bodies and valves and passages. And what happens is they leak, then they could cause your clutches to slip, which in turn can break your transmission. Also, you're not going to find many of these individual parts at the dealership. If you come in there with a car with 100,000 miles or really anything, they're not going to sit there and fiddle around with your valve body. They're most likely going to quote you on an entire new valve body or an entire new transmission for thousands of dollars. So that is the truth with a lifetime fluid. I don't agree with it at all. And kind of a general blanket statement, if your car says lifetime transmission fluid, just change the fluid in the filter about every 50,000 miles and your transmission should last a lot longer. All right, so we're replacing the 3/4 overlap sleeve, and a little bit of a surprise. It looks like someone's probably already done that Transgo shift kit because these look to be the sleeves that come with that kit. Notice they don't have an O-ring like the ones with the Sonax kit. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace all of these anyway, although these probably work okay, but I do like the O-ring design a little bit better. So you slide that in there, then you roll this on a table, something flat, lube it up, and put it right back together. And in this case, we're gonna be reusing the valve and the spring. All
All right, guys, we are almost done with this valve body, and then we're going to put it back in the car and go for a ride. So kind of nervous, little excited, not going to lie, but I just wanted to show you a couple things here. I don't believe that the Transgo kit has been done because this does not have the updated pressure regulator valve. As you can see here, this is completely different than our new one. Same goes with the lubrication valve. This is the totally old design, which is just a valve and a spring, and we're installing a sleeve, a new spring, and then another sleeve right here. So just wanted to show you guys that. This part is super easy. These things just go right in and out, and I'm just using regular transmission fluid to lubricate them, and that's it. Let's wrap this thing up. All right, guys, sorry, just one more thing before we get to putting this in the car and going for a test drive, and that is in the Transgo kit, they do give you a couple of springs that you should replace because these springs can break, and by the way, you should check all of the springs to make sure they're not cracked. So in this case, we have a new spring for the 2-3 shift valve, which is this one right here, so we're going to take this one out and just pop in our new red spring like this. Very, very easy. And then on the other side of the valve body, we got to pop a plate off and replace this one with an updated white spring. And then also here is one of the other overlap sleeves. You can see it's also worn. I'm not saying this is abnormal, but you can just imagine that parts like this that move back and forth in very tight tolerance bores could get worn out a lot quicker if you don't change that transmission fluid. So lifetime transmission fluid, I don't think so. I put the filter on, totally forgot one bolt was on the ground. Always double check how many bolts you've put in your valve body. That's probably important. And we are torquing everything, of course. I will put torque specs down below for you guys and a link to some workshop manuals if you guys want to just pick up a manual and learn how to do all sorts of stuff on your car. All right, guys, it is super early the next morning, and I wrapped this car up yesterday, got it up to operating temperature, set the transmission fluid, checked it for leaks, and all is good. And I also drove this car to work yesterday, and let me tell you, it feels amazing. The transmission shifts like brand new, and I've experienced this in the past when replacing the Sonax overlap sleeves and other valves in the valve body, is that it's basically like doing a minor restoration to your transmission. The shift quality is much improved. It has a lot better engagement. It's just a very smooth transmission after this, and it honestly just feels like a brand new car. Also, the responsiveness is awesome. The downshifts are a lot faster. I think that part has to do with the tune, but so far I'm very happy with our little restoration that we did. We also did all the maintenance as well, so this transmission is all set, except we still have to check to see if the torque converter is harshly locking up in first gear. Remember, it's supposed to lock up in first gear, but you're not supposed to notice it as much. And the reason why we're waiting until the next day to test this is once the transmission gets a little bit of heat into it, the issue kind of goes away. So it's been sitting for 6 hours. It's 20 degrees out. We should have no issue duplicating this concern if it still exists. So fingers crossed. Let's go for a ride. All right, guys, here we go. Here we go. Let's see if this is fixed. Fingers crossed. Let's do this. No, I put it in manual first. You see that shift? Hang on, let's do this again. All right, so this is an excellent way to test for this. Just put it in first. It shouldn't feel like it's shifting at all. And it's still doing it, although this is a million times better. it actually feels kind of normal. My other diesel does this a little bit as well. I mean, it is supposed to lock up in first, but before we were getting a very harsh engagement. It would jerk the whole car. It honestly felt kind of broken. So let's test this out a couple more times. All right, so I'm gonna take off with a little bit more throttle. And it does not happen. So, I mean, honestly, you really have to be just hitting the gas just barely for this to happen. So, honestly, under most driving circumstances, this really is not a big deal. It goes away once the transmission warms up just a little bit. So, hang on, let me warm this up and I'll show you guys what it does once it's just got a little bit of heat into it. All right, we're at full engine operating temperature. I've driven just a couple miles. Oh yeah, it's gone. It's totally gone, 100%. And honestly, it would not go away this quickly before we did all of the work. So we've made a massive improvement, and I have reset adaptations by simply just disconnecting the battery for about an hour. So there is a possibility that this completely goes away even when the engine and the transmission are totally cold. But it's like 17 degrees out. This is kind of a worst case scenario. And after just a few minutes and just a couple miles, 2-3 miles, the problem is completely gone. So I'm pretty happy with this. All right, guys, I've slowed down a little bit on the highway to kind of show you what the transmission shifts like with the tune. So check this out. So it downshifts a lot quicker, and it does shift a little bit faster than it did before. But guys, don't expect anything too crazy. These torque converter transmissions can only shift so fast, but this is a major improvement in drivability. I do like the responsiveness and how quickly it downshifts now compared to before. This transmission was very, very slow before, so this is a very nice improvement.
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking on the torque converter clutch lockup issue, because it still does technically exist, although it is vastly improved after putting that damper valve in there. Before, when it engaged, it was a very harsh engagement. It almost felt like the car was broken. My wife noticed it, and now I don't think anyone would notice this at all, but it is still technically there. And this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to talk to Tony at Race IQ and see if he can just tune out the engagement of the torque converter clutch in first gear altogether, because to be honest with you, I don't even know why it does this. This is the first transmission that I'd ever heard of locking up in first gear. I don't think it's doing much for efficiency, especially on a CDI. The thing is just so efficient anyway. So if he can tune it out, I'm going to go that route. Other than that, I'm probably not going to do much about it. To be honest with you, I plan on adding a lot more horsepower and torque to this car. So chances are in probably the next few months, I'll need to remove this transmission to either beef it up or fix something. Maybe. These things are kind of strong. We'll see. And at that point, I will take the torque converter out and replace it or have it rebuilt. I spoke to Sonax, and although the TCC damper kit that I put in the car is meant to fix this exact problem, there is another possibility, which is internal leakage inside of the torque converter. So as things heat up and expand, that leak goes away, and that's why the transmission is basically fixed after it gets up to operating temperature. So that's what I'm thinking. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Other than that, I am super happy with everything we've done to this transmission. We knocked out a bunch of preventative maintenance, a bunch of preventative repairs. It shifts faster, it's more responsive, and honestly, it just feels like brand new, especially once it gets up to operating temperature. So I really can't complain for the little bit of money that I've spent on this transmission. So comment down below if you guys had any really weird transmission problems. Have you fixed them at home for not a lot of money and not spent a couple $1,000s at the dealer just throwing a transmission or throwing a torque converter at it immediately without looking at anything else? I've seen that happen for sure. Let me know in the comments section. With that being said, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I'm doing the thumbs up thing a little early. Hit the thumbs up button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. Share the video. And most importantly, change your transmission fluid. Lifetime transmission fluid is total BS. And have a fantastic day. I'll see you all in the next video.